When I think about the true essence of Mighty Car Mods, I think about affordable, I think nugget, I think modifying to reach the true potential of what your car can be. And when I think about a car like that, I think about an EK Civic, which is an awesome...
There's only been 2 good Honda Civics on this show. There's been the green one with the casino in the boot, and there's been Mr. VTEC. Everything else has been rubbish. It's a fact. I know it. You know it. Everyone knows it. Civics are done. Their day is done. The whole era of flying down Church Street in the 90s in your Civic, that time is done. We're done. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Are you still burnt from the orange one that became yellow? That actually ended up really...
It was just a Civic that went on for like biblical proportions of time.
We got a Honda Civic. Hello, mate.
Which is why this time I've got some demands. If there's going to be a Civic in a building that I co-share with you, because it's fair, like when you and I are like uni flatmates and we take it in turns cleaning the toilet, and remember we had other people sharing it with us, and they actually bogged on the wall, and one time, I shit you not, there was turd on the roof, and it was during Marty's week of cleaning.
I had to clean it.
And he did have to clean it up, and likewise I would say that if there's going to be more Civic projects happening under a roof in which we share, my love, then I believe it just has to be one big episode, none of this 15 chapters of Civic. All right, and I am just going to go and buy another Golf and or something similar, because if we're just going to do that, we'll just do that. I'm not buying another Golf, but I have found an absolute nugget on Facebook Marketplace that I'm going to be working on. So I'm just going to leave you to that, but I'll be back to help around and hand you things. But I'm just going to be anywhere except for here if you need me, or if you need me. I'm just doing that important thing by getting my hair cut.
In respect of his wishes,
very much.
One epic episode, we're going to turn this from a bog, stock, boring NA Civic into a turbocharged monster, and we're going to do it on the cheap, people. Come with us. We're doing it after hours. We're getting some mates along to help. This is going to be epic.
Did you say cheap and turbo Civic? Yeah.
Getting a good Civic is like getting a good root canal. It's probably going to be expensive, you're probably going to need some expert help, and you'll forever be shaking your head at the fact that this one costs 20 times more than our last one. It is, however, a nice, honest starting point. Luckily for me, I've got quite a few mates who love Civics, and I'm not sure if that says more about me than it does them, but my favourite thing to do is to hang out and work on cars, so that's exactly what we're going to do together.
This is a slightly dirty EK Civic, and this is my good friend George. He's built a couple of Hondas, and I wanted to get your opinion, my friend. What are we looking at? What is this?
D16. No VTEC.
No VTEC.
No VTEC.
No VTEC, yo.
No, man.
You obviously know about our yellow Civic, B16, VTEC, classic build.
Yep.
What I think we need to go for with this is more like cheap, basic, get it done.
Yep.
So in your opinion, how do we do that?
Turbo kit.
Yep.
Anything online, really. Yeah. Find something to clear the aircon if you want to keep it.
Yeah.
Changing a clutch, of course.
Done.
Done, man.
Simple.
Simple.
Super simple.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Do you want to give me a hand ripping it to bits?
Yeah, man.
Mad, let's do it.
Let's do it.
The last time it's ever going to be NA, people. That's exciting. They should all be turboed, all of them.
This leaky old Civic is desperately in need of some boost. The idea is to try and do it as cheaply as possible, recycling parts where we can and only using the most basic parts to get it done efficiently. After cleaning off decades of grot from underneath the car, the gearbox is the first thing to be removed because this thing will absolutely torch a stock clutch with more power. Fortunately, this is a quick and easy job on a Civic, which is probably one of the reasons why they're so popular. An extreme performance clutch is going in. It's multi-puck with a lightened flywheel and a heavy-duty pressure plate. It'll easily handle what this little D16 will be able to push out.
So we told some mates that we were working on a Honda tonight, and no one showed up. And then we said there was going to be free food and something. There was like heaps of dudes here. So we actually got a lot done. We got the clutch in, which is very cool, including the new flywheel and the awesome extreme clutch, which is going to be great because even though the clutch that was in there was pretty new, we'd probably just turn it into smoke not long after. I played that game on the dyno enough times to know. It's pretty much bolt turbo stuff on. There's a lot of room
there is
in this engine bay,
Quite
which is really, really, really cool. So that's next, but tomorrow because it's late. But it's got a clutch, which is mad, which means we're not going to create a smoke show. Well, from the tyres, maybe, not the clutch.
You'd probably struggle to find a Honda owner who hasn't considered adding boost to their Civic. They handle well is usually the excuse handed out when someone says it's slow and shit. Fortunately, these days there are hundreds of turbo kits out there to suit these cars, and they are cheap.
This here is our cheap and cheerful turbo kit. I'm pretty excited to see how well this works. This is really good value for money. So for around $1,000, give or take, you get all of this, except for some fuel system stuff, which you can do separately. Now, it doesn't come with management, doesn't come with injectors, pump, all those kind of things. That's what you add to make it work really well. But these are sold. A lot of people just run these on stock ECUs with stock fuel systems, mostly just for the noise, and eventually probably blow their engine. Not us, we're gonna do it properly, but we are starting with a very basic kit. What I like about it, cast manifold. These are super tough, similar to what an OEM manufacturer would do, but this is specifically made for a D16. So you've got the turbo that sits on the top, or the bottom, depending which way you mount it, and then you've got the external wastegate. It is an externally wastegated turbo. What else is notable about the turbo is the size of it. We don't know. We're considering the size, don't worry, because we don't actually know. No water cooling, so just cooled by oil. Quite big, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because a bigger turbo that flows a bit more air potentially lets the engine breathe a bit better, your power band's moved up a bit higher, and you can potentially save the engine by not bringing the torque on too quickly. The other thing I like about this kit, what I don't like is the red, that's just yuck. What I do like, intercooler pipes. A bit of time and effort would have gone into this to have mandrel bent pipes that are made specifically to fit an EK Civic. This is a huge time saver because you don't have to make your own intercooler kit. They're also aluminium, so they're very, very light. Comes with all the joiners that you need. Also comes with the turbo oil drain, the turbo oil feed with the right fittings as well, which is a big time saver, not having to do that for a custom. What you do have to custom is your exhaust. So what we want to do is get as much of this turbo kit onto the car as quickly as we can because we have a date with Castle Hill Exhaust who are going to create the rest of the exhaust system because you cannot get an aftermarket exhaust for EK Civics in Australia right now. They just do not exist. There's none anywhere in the country. So we're going to go custom made, which we're actually pretty excited about, but we need to get this kit on within the next 24 hours to make it to the exhaust shop to get our appointment so we can get this thing working. So we're going to do as much of the hardware as we can that the exhaust depends on, and the rest we'll just pick through as we get time.
Of course, there are cheaper ways to add boost. If you can recycle and modify your factory manifold, use second-hand intercoolers and turbo parts, then you could scrape in for less. But in terms of an off-the-shelf aftermarket part kit for a car that never came out turbo from the factory in any form, this is about as cheap as it gets. There's still the risk we'll have to modify most of this stuff, but the quality of the kit usually determines how much of a bad time you're going to have.
So it came as a kit and it said EK Civic. So far it points directly at the block and the gearbox if you just put it in like that. So I'm guessing we need to rotate it. Why am I guessing? No instructions. You pay extra for instructions. We didn't pay extra. This is what we got.
So straight away, we have to mess with the orientation of the turbo to point it in the right direction. And then it still doesn't fit. Not without a grinder anyway.
What are you doing, bro? No worry, cuz.
It turns out Honda left a good amount of the engine block in the way of our oversized turbo. At this point, it might be smart to find a different turbo, but then the rest of the kit won't fit and we're committed. With the turbo mounted, we can see if the dump pipe will fit, and it doesn't either.
You put a Honda on your hoist and then everyone shows up.
Yeah, bro.
It's like Honda fanboys are everywhere, aren't
Absolutely. If you got Honda, mate, you got friends.
they? You've had turbo Hondas.
Absolutely.
You built your own, didn't you?
I did.
What do you think of our kit?
I think it's all right. I just think the turbo's
It's
massive,
okay.
bro.
Yeah, it's big, isn't it?
It's actually gone together all right. I mean,
Yeah.
you've only had to do minor clearancing to the block everywhere with the grinder.
And the dump doesn't fit. But you
Yeah,
get what
the
you
dump
pay
pipe.
for.
Bro, absolutely.
And if the turbo kit wasn't so crappy, we wouldn't get to hang out.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not so bad.
Yeah.
Off to the exhaust shop.
The aim is to get the turbo mounted and the start of the dump pipe in place so Chris at the exhaust shop can continue the exhaust system to the back of the car. We've come down to Castle Hill Exhaust who have agreed to help us finish it off.
The next step on our D16 powered single overhead cam basic Civic is an exhaust. Now we have mounted our headers, well, our turbo header, and the turbo itself. It kind of only just fits, even though it's a bolt-on kit. But what we need to do now is connect that up to the rest of the exhaust. We're actually going to do the exhaust first, because that way when we finish off the rest of the build we can start it and drive it. It makes sense just to do it at this stage. And we're down here at Castle Hill Exhaust to visit the guys here who've helped us with a lot of builds in the past. And they are going to whip up something custom made. So it's actually the fanciest thing on this car is the exhaust, but you cannot buy an exhaust for this car at the moment in Australia that fits and would work. Otherwise you could just buy something and join it up. But actually custom made is going to be really good for this car, and I'm very excited to see what they come up with.
So it's time to answer the question, do you need a new exhaust if you're adding a turbo? The answer is probably yes. The standard exhaust is small and designed to be quiet and cheap to mass produce. Your options here are to use second-hand exhaust parts off a bigger car, which will flow better, but if you're keeping it forever, a stainless steel exhaust is worth the money because it's going to last. Chris is going to join up the dump pipe that came with our kit to new pipe, mount it securely to the car, and continue it through a cat converter, resonator, and rear muffler. To mount it properly, he's going to make up a template from cardboard, transfer that to a computer, and then using a CNC plasma cutter, cut out a stainless plate to fit perfectly onto the factory hanger. The rest of the exhaust is then roughed out on the car, then removed to be TIG welded on the bench. It looks excellent, and with a decent rear muffler and dump, it's going to sound pretty good.
We have pushed this amazing Civic back into Super Garage. A bunch of mates are coming over to give us a hand, because if you have a Civic, you have heaps of mates. Everyone knows that. And we're going to start attacking this. I'm going to work on the fuel system up the front. George is going to start working on the fuel system up the back. James is going to start doing some intercooler piping. Miles is here. He's going to help. We're just going to see how far we can get in one night.
The turbo adds air which needs more fuel to make a bigger bang. We're going to upgrade the fuel pump and injectors to flow better. This starts at the back of the car with a fuel pump, and the trick is to know your power goals so you don't put something in too big which can cause more problems. It's a straightforward swap in this case, and it fits on the factory hanger. A huge pump will require a wiring upgrade, but this one should be just fine with the factory wiring. Next we're going to try and get our injectors in. We can reuse the factory rail using some adapters to get the sizing right top and bottom. Then we need to get the fuel in and out of the rail itself. This Civic uses top feed injectors, which makes this whole process pretty straightforward. But we need to get the fuel in and out of the rail, plus add an adjustable pressure regulator, which requires a bit more customization.
Right, Isaac, what are we doing? We're adapting.
We're basically just taking out the Honda fitting, which was pretty easy actually, and it's M12 by 1.5, 1.25.
And the other end's the same.
And the other end's the same on the filter. So this is like a no-brainer. Let's just make up a line.
So all we're going to do is make a dash 6 line that goes from there to there.
2 banjos, done.
What about the return?
For the return, I reckon we're going to tap that for a 1/8 MPT 27.
Yep.
And then we're just going to put an elbow on it.
An elbow. And then I think the return on the Civic is like one of those 1/4 inch ones, or what's that in metric? 6 mil?
6 point something millimeters, yeah.
6.5 mil. So 6.5 return, but that'll be fine for this kind of power level anyway.
Yeah.
One of the handiest tools you can have at your disposal is some clever mates. Isaac is going to tap out the port that houses the factory fuel pressure regulator so we can screw in a fitting of our own. A factory rail like this isn't designed for huge flow, so if you know your power targets are higher, it could be worth exploring aftermarket fuel rails. We're tapping the rail to suit barb fittings. These are similar to the factory lines as they use rubber hose and clamps. Being that they're so easy to pull apart and reassemble, they are my preference on lower power builds. Next, a GFB FXS fuel pressure regulator can go in along with a gauge so we can test fit our intercooler piping and see where everything is sitting.
Making some amazing progress thanks to a whole bunch of mates that have showed up to help, which is great because we're sort of doing this in our spare time. That is freshly swaged, I think they call that, intercooler pipe. So that's going to connect up and get the spacing just right because our screamer is in the way. It's a good problem to have when your screamer's in the way. Oh yes, that's so satisfying. The cooler bolts up onto the factory spots at the bottom on brackets. We've shortened this to get around our screamer. That is looking excellent. And it's very late, so we're all going home. Bye.
I was really hoping to not have to modify the intercooler pipes, but unfortunately they just clash with everything. With cheaper kits and kits designed for left-hand drive cars, you do often run into this issue. Making the pipes from scratch ensures you won't have fitment problems, but it takes heaps more time and heaps of welding gas.
Pipe is welded, intercooler pipe. I'm going to show the best bit. Oh, there is no best bit. It welded okay. It's really, really thin material and it's anodized, so that's a bit challenging. For anyone who's following along with TIG settings, it's about 50 amps, 75 hertz, balance set right in the middle, lots of post gas, and it started to weld nice. Obviously, the better you fit it, the better it welds. So the bits where it was fitted really nice, welded really nice. But that's going to seal and we'll paint it up so it looks nice. It's going to go like this with the silicone there, and it's going to go like that with the silicone there, and that's going to be the pipe for the whole top part of the engine. Dave's here, everyone. Blessed us with his presence, brought some goodies, always a good time. This is where you need to spend money on your Civic. If you're using cheap bits off the internet, eBay parts, stuff like that, this is where you spend the money on your ECU. Why? Because when you upgrade all your hardware, you keep this. You swap your engine, you keep this. This is the stuff that keeps it alive as well, and that's important because a $300 Wrecker motor is all well and good, but if you keep blowing it up because you don't have good management, that's my lecture over. Is that all correct?
Often you even spend it twice because you spend it the first time and cheap out and just get it running, and then it might blow up, like you said, and then I'll do it a bit better this time, and then get something secondhand, unknown condition, and then all right, no, I'll do it properly because I've blown it up for the third time now.
Some people often say in comments, oh, you're using a Haltech thing, and yeah, because it works and it keeps the cars alive, and pretty much everything we've ever put this on has worked really well. So on that note, we're also using...
And there is help.
And there's help.
There's help available.
Exactly.
So
you can actually get help.
Makes a big difference.
And if you ring up and need help, good chance you'll talk to Dave or someone as clever as Dave. So we're using some things. So ECUs, widebands, that's the usual deal. We'll get to that. But what I'm interested in now, we've also spent a little bit of money on some sensors. So fluid pressure and temperature sensor is one example. So that's going to be used for?
I think we're going to do oil pressure.
Yep.
And we'll do oil temp because this is going to do a bit of track work. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, it will be interesting to keep an eye on what's actually happening in terms of the oil temperature.
Because we can set up safeties.
Yeah, I mean, there's not necessarily a lot of oil in this system, so keeping an eye on it so we don't hurt an engine might be a good idea.
Boost control. Yep. Also, we've got our external gate, a bit different. We'll get to that as well. Yep. Air temp, you need that for all of them. We've also got...
I think we were looking at putting this on for fuel, but we've got the gauge on it at the moment, so I don't think fuel will be such a problem.
Set and forget with a good pump, right?
I think so, yeah. So I think this was just in case. We were also talking about possibly putting on a coolant pressure. Yeah, cool. So I don't know whether we're going to do that in one of the combo sensors or whether the threads allow us for a 1/8. So that makes it easy for a 1/8.
And we are using a
Elite 750.
Why is this the right ECU for this?
This is the right ECU for this budget.
Oh yeah?
I think budget is really the first thing that comes up. This can do 6-cylinder, but it does everything we need it to do. Plenty of outputs on this. Inputs we're going to get a little bit short probably with everything we want to do.
We can expand it though, right?
But we can definitely expand it later down the track. We can make allowances now so we can convert to a 2-plug later.
Yeah, cool.
Very, very easy. Very, very easy.
But in terms of getting into it, it's this. So
This
fingers
is
crossed this will
entry
be a
level.
reasonably simple wire up. Plug and pin kit, so we'll be reutilising as much of the loom as we can and only running a few extra wires, which seems to be the basic way we end up doing this often.
Yep. There will be some leftover wires, so we can try and use those just because running wires through the firewall sucks. It just does. It's not fun.
Yeah.
So whatever we can do, we will definitely utilise what's there. Stuff like emission controls and that sort of stuff, we can just delete it and then repurpose those wires for something else. So
We'll let you work your magic. I'm going to continue getting the front mount to work. By recycling bits also. Thanks, man. Thanks for your help.
Good.
Keen as. Let's do it.
Back before quality, affordable ECUs were available, it did make sense to run interceptors and mess with the fuel pressure to accommodate a turbo. But these days, a programmable one like our Elite 750 is a no-brainer, with engine protection, live VE tuning, and importantly, heaps of room to grow when you go chasing more power. While Dave begins the wiring, I'm going to finish our intercooler pipes.
Got a lot done in a short amount of time. Intercooler is pretty much done now as well. We're going to take it off and clean it out because there's a lot of grinding and bits and pieces in there. We've got the air temp sensor in there. We've got the intake for the turbo is ready to go. I'm just waiting on a filter. So when the filter gets here, it's going to go there. Haven't welded that one yet, so we can still move it around a bit. Got the post filter but pre-turbo air to do the breather. We've got to do wastegate. We've got to pull some wires through and pull a vacuum line through. We've got to do all that. Looks like a lot, but I reckon there's maybe a day in it to get it finished. But good progress, very happy. Very fun working on a Civic. It's kind of a weird feeling though, because it is a Civic, but it feels good.
Assuming that your intercooler fits, most of these jobs so far you can get away without welding. But tapping the sump and welding on a fitting is required to get oil out of the turbocharger and return it into the sump. There are ways to do this with O-ring fittings, but more often than not they end up leaking, so if you don't have a welder, maybe prep it all and then find someone who does. We've removed the sump, given it a good clean, drilled a hole and installed a -10 stainless bung. Then we can slazz it up and stick it back onto the engine block.
Once again, the Civic late into the night. It has been a bit of an after hours project. We've had the mates over and just sort of getting stuff done. Really enjoyable because it's just like cheap and cheerful and actually all fits together pretty well. We had a bit of a fail with the sump because we damaged the fitting, so we had to do it again. So we've actually got 2 sumps, but this is actually going to work really well for our oil drain. We just go brook around there, and then we're probably going to have to rework our screamer a little bit because we are trying to keep aircon and a few other things that mean it's still a nice car to drive, but makes packaging turbos more difficult. If you want an easy turbo, just pull everything off and add a turbo and send it, but it's going to be good.
Next, we're going to put oil back into the engine so when we try and start it, we won't be spinning the turbo without any lubrication. We're topping the coolant back up and also bleeding out any air with a funnel bucket. The gearbox was drained when we pulled the drive shafts out to change the clutch, so that's getting filled back up as well. Then we can lock in the oil feed line and tighten up our intercooler pipes now that they've all been washed out.
As usual, if you put a Civic on your hoist, lots of people show up and help you, but you do have to feed them dinner, which is what we're about to do. We've got everything back together. I've put all the front mount pipes on. They've all been secured down. We're just fixing both the shifter because it was backwards, don't know why, probably when we changed the clutch. And now we're putting some gearbox oil in it, and then it's all up to Dave to get it started. He's already been here and done a lot of the wiring in advance, but there's some things we didn't get a chance to do last time. So that's what's happening now. Dave's going to get it working. Hopefully tonight we will get this thing started, and then we're going to go straight onto the dyno.
We have a dyno deadline we need to hit. With most of the hardware in place, now it's all about wiring. As Dave makes his way through the various systems, we can begin to check the car properly. As soon as we primed the fuel pump for the first time, we could smell fuel, which you absolutely don't want squirting around inside your hot engine bay.
We got a fuel leak. I think
It's just from this little double flare fitting on the bottom of the fuel filter. But I reckon we've got to take the filter out just to see where that's actually coming from. So can you see the fitting here? It's like a brake line fitting. So it's probably just got like a double flare on the end that goes sort of on the inside of the filter there. So we might actually have to undo it just to get to it.
We've retained the factory fuel filter position and adapted out of it using a banjo fitting. With it reseated, it's good to go, so next we're going to heat wrap the screamer pipe so it doesn't melt its surroundings. We're going to swap this out for a GFB wastegate when our adapter arrives later on because we aren't confident this no-name gate will control boost properly, but we'll be able to reuse most of the screamer itself.
It's a big moment, people. This car has been 4 months in the making because we've been doing it sort of in spare time after hours with some mates. Just to get it done and to do it on the cheap, obviously, as cheap as possible by asking favours. So we've got an oil pressure sensor in there. Dave has loaded up a map that he basically made up from scratch. And what we're looking for is oil pressure, and this is also the point we check for leaks. So we checked for leaks before with the fuel, which you saw, and we did have a leak, so it's good that we could prime the pump. While we're fixing that, Dave was getting the wiring sorted for the oil pressure. And we've got a couple of other sensors in there, but that's the one that matters the most. So now we're going to crank it, make sure we've got oil pressure, and then we can try and actually start it. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, man. That sounds pretty good. Just give me a couple of seconds. Just want to make sure I've got everything somewhat configured.
The only things that
like
can go
I would
wrong
expect.
is leaks, obviously.
Oh,
electronically, is there anything that can...
I haven't got the coil plugged in. Honda stuff's always a bit funny.
Okay.
So from what I've read, this one works backwards to most Hondas of this sort of era. So
But Hondas work backwards from every other car.
correct.
So this ignition system works forwards, which is backwards to a Honda.
Which way does it spin?
I don't know.
Okay, it doesn't matter. We'll just figure it out. I won't be able to see anything except for oil pressure because I've got the crank sensor and the coil unplugged, but all I want to see is it crank, no leaks out there, and we'll just see what happens.
Ready?
Yeah.
So we've been cranking and cranking and cranking, and we purged air out of the oil system. We got a bit of oil out the little block there, so we are fairly confident.
Injectors off.
Turning injectors off. You are turning them off?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to crank it again.
See if we get RPM.
See if we get RPM, which means the triggering's working, and then we have to check the crank offset to make sure that it's actually the ECU and the engine are referencing the same point, and then hopefully we'll actually get it to start. Here we go, trying again. We've got RPM, now we're trying a different crank offset. It wants to go, man.
It does.
It's thinking about it.
It does.
That means fuel's getting in there, hey? Or it wouldn't do that at all.
Nope.
Got to grab a different jumper pack or some jumper leads because we just don't have enough current to make this thing crank properly. Hit it again. Got injectors on now?
Yep.
Ooh, it wants to go.
Wants to go now.
It wants to go.
Try.
It's funny because the thunderstorm is intensifying outside as we get through this. Ooh. Oh, dude, that's so close to being running. A little bit of throttle.
A little bit more throttle. Yeah, because just got to get it to breathe.
It's alive. That exhaust sounds excellent. I was so looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, it does actually.
Sounds like a mad little turbo nugget. Rad, dude. All right, now it's just fine tuning, making it work, making it run. That's fantastic. And then we can put it on the dyno, but we might end up road tuning this thing first just for lols. But once again, it's late. So see you next time.
And it runs, not perfectly, but it means we can now get busy connecting all of our sensors and fine-tune the idle. Our wideband O2 sensor, air intake sensor, and oil pressure sensor are the three main ones we'll be using, but we can add more later using an IO expander box or even the IC7 dash. Next, we're going to change out the cruddy old spark plugs. These have a heat range of 5, and as per Tuning Fork's tuning bible, we're going one heat range colder to 6s, and once we're ready for the dyno, we will also gap them down. The Civic now moves under its own power, so we can stick its butt out the door and idle it, check the ignition timing offset, and also bleed everything properly. And while it's there, we're going to reinstall the front bumper and also install an ethanol flex sensor in the return line. This means we can run both petrol and E85, or any mixture of both, and the sensor will tell the ECU the content and adjust the tune accordingly once Scott has mapped it out.
day 847 of the Civic. Just kidding, it hasn't quite been that many days. It feels like it though.
A little bit.
Isaac's here. Isaac's been helping. Thanks, man. I appreciate all your hard work on this. It's now working. We just installed the flex sensor into the return line here. And now it's time to look at tuning it. Now, you can go to the dyno. Dynos can be expensive, tuning can be expensive. If you've got a relationship with a tuner, you know someone good, you trust them, absolutely talk to them first. If you don't, you can have a crack at road tuning, which is exactly what we're going to do to save some coin. I'm paying for dinner and Isaac's going to jump on the laptop. I'm going to drive, I'm going to do some laps. Tell me about road tuning Civics. Have you done it before?
Yes, definitely have. I had an EK that was black and it was like this, very similar, different head, similar setup.
Yep.
And I couldn't afford to get anyone to tune my car, and I had some pretty good basic principles of what an engine needed in order to be safe.
Yep. Fuel, air, spark.
Absolutely. But also, I probably wasn't making huge amounts of power doing it myself, but it was safe. Yeah, it was probably a bit rich, probably didn't have much timing, and it survived. I drove it every day, and I've had 5 or 6 cars since where on EFI, I've tuned it myself.
So this already starts in idles, which is great. It actually drives now. Like, we've taken it around the block to make sure everything's good. Mostly to make sure stuff's not leaking out of it because we've changed so much. The idea with this is to make it properly drivable, to actually put some kilometres on it to properly test the setup. We will still go to the dyno and like hit it with power runs, because also we want to find out what kind of power it makes, and also we want to do the ethanol, which we'll do separately. So we're going to jump in, go for a couple of laps and just see how it goes. You can come with us.
Before we set out, we figured we should try and make it idle, which turned out to be a complete nightmare. These cars are known for having fiddly idle air control valves, and getting it to maintain a good idle was proving very difficult. Soon we worked out it was actually completely seized, and the only way we were going to make our dyno date was to seal it up and then rely on the throttle blade stopper to hold the idle where we wanted. It's not perfect, but it's something we can address later with a simple idle circuit connected to the Haltech.
The main difference between road tuning and dyno tuning, obviously on a dyno you can hold the speed and you can try lots of different speeds. Here we have to do the speed limit. We've got different amounts of load, like going up a hill now it's going to load up a bit more. But I'm just trying to keep everything really light and my input's really slow, while Isaac is tweaking the numbers, and it's getting better as I'm driving, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, the Haltech's sort of catching up to what we're targeting, but at the moment it's way too fat overall. So we either make a full-on correction to the whole map, or we just give Haltech a chance to do something for a minute.
And then you've got to apply that learning, don't you?
That's right.
Feels good though, like it feels like a Civic. Currently I'm not using any turbo really at the moment. I'm just staying out of that range so that it doesn't go into that part of the map.
Yeah, it's just really rich.
And but it drives like a normal little Civic, which is great. That's what you want. I'll just keep doing loops of this road until Isaac tells me to go different speed or different load sites, and then we might pick a different road. So it's going to be this over and over and over again, so we'll see in a minute. I mean, I felt the change there.
Yeah.
Did that go richer or leaner?
Lean.
That's the experience you don't get on the dyno, where you feel
the change.
The instant change. I mean, maybe as a dyno operator you do, but normally that's not me.
And this low load, we're not going to hurt anything.
Nah.
We can hurt some plugs.
I'm at like 20% throttle most of the time until it tell me otherwise. Yeah, it's going to be sick, man.
Yeah, it's good.
It's going to be great. Laggy's not really a big deal, actually.
No, but we can get around that with ignition timing. If I've got 12 degrees in it, it's gonna lag. We want, like 28 to come on boost, and then we want to taper it off.
Yeah.
And it's not even getting close to that.
People, we're still going. It's been hours. We're still doing laps. We've used nearly half a tank of fuel, but we want to show you something because we think we've nailed it.
The road dyno takes way longer.
The road dyno takes a long time, but hey, we're hanging out, we're having a good time.
Oh mate, we're having a great time.
Massive thanks to this guy, because let's see if we can hear a little bit of that. That sweet dose. Here we go. Let's find a little straight bit of road. Second gear. Here we go. Here we go. That's
How
excellent.
good does external
That's
gauge
excellent.
sound?
Yeah.
It's not real loud either.
Vent to atmosphere, as they say. Nice little bit of dose there.
Oh yeah, it's making some horsepower now, bro.
Yeah, it's going.
Jesus.
It's going. That's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
That's going to be very enjoyable to drive to the dyno. It's interesting to see on a power run what that's like.
For sure.
But you've got conservative fueling, right? Like just
super conservative. It was just a little bit of timing. Maybe a tiny bit too much, we'll see.
Thanks, man.
No worries, bro. All good.
A few days later, with our road tune in place and nearly 1,000 k's of street driving, we headed over to Haltech to see Scott, otherwise known as Tuning Fork. If it's got an engine, this guy can tune it, and yes, that includes tractors. His first suggestion was to gap the plugs down, as the stock ignition system would hit a wall at some point trying to distribute enough spark energy to light our boosted mixer on fire. We're using a handy little spark plug gapping tool to get the job done. Our new GFB EX38 wastegate is in place, ready to leak off any exhaust gas we don't want spinning the turbo.
It's time, everybody. Scott, otherwise known as the tuning fork, is going to give us a hand to get this thing properly dynoed. We put a road tune in it. That's about all we've done. What happens now?
Well, we've just pulled the plugs out and had a bit of a look, and they're a little bit dirty, so it probably hasn't been getting the best fuel economy, but...
Big gap too.
Big gap. But it's nice if you can get the thing up and running so that you guys can put it around, make sure it doesn't have any like driveline weird stuff or leaks or anything like that. If he's driving pretty well, it gives me a bit of confidence when it goes on the dyno that we're going to get a result, and we're not going to have to go back to try and fix a crazy water leak somewhere or just something painful.
This is a way to save money, right?
100%.
Because you're not fixing this on the dyno, you're just tuning.
If you've got access to somebody who can remote access to get the thing up and running after you've done all your mods, it helps heaps, because other tow trucks back and forward are, you know, if you take the day off work to wait for the towie to turn up and take it somewhere, it's heaps easier.
Got it.
This is the first time I've seen it, and immediately the exhaust manifold.
Nice, hey?
Like,
proper
I get it, I know what we're doing here, but I'm in awe that having access to an exhaust manifold like that, it makes me feel like I want to go on eBay and look for cast exhaust manifolds and buy the exhaust manifold, then buy the car to fit the exhaust manifold.
Exactly. I think this is a really interesting way to make some power in a Civic that's already a nice clean car, doesn't require an engine swap, don't pull the motor out, put a good clutch in it, put a turbo kit on it, put a Haltech on it and send it, which is exactly what we're going to do today. We are going to send it, we're going to see how it goes. Scotty's going to work his magic on petrol. If that's all fine, we're going to put some ethanol in it and see what kind of power it makes. We're not aiming for the moon, we want to be able to do a track day. That's the brief. You reckon we can do it?
Is it going to do a track day with this thing? We've got any more of these things?
Yeah, they're cheap as.
All right, well, first thing we should probably do is we'll load it up, we'll do all the light stuff and just sort of make sure that it feels good. We'll go straight into getting the boost control set up and do the big power stuff, and then we'll come back down through. What wastegate spring, what's going on in here?
I think it's got a 10-pound in it, and I have a 5-pound one, so we can see how that behaves, and if it's too excitable, we can put a 5-pound spring in it.
Perfect, and we've got electronic boost control. So look, I can't see us running huge boosts, so if it's got a 5 or a 7-pound spring and we run roughly double that, being able to use the boost control so that we might be able to have boost per gear and that sort of stuff.
I feel like it's going to be 10 pounds and this is where it's going to be happiest, but we'll see, Okay. We'll see.
All right, well, mate, less talking and
let's go.
A bit more thrashing.
Keen as.
There's no built motors, billet turbo wheels, top dollar plumbing or R&D behind this. It's a cheap turbo kit from the internet with a fuel system and ECU bolted to a stock Civic with nearly 250,000 kilometres on the clock, and we're really hoping it survives today.
First run, should be all right.
Did that just make like 110 straight up?
Yeah, 110, 115, something like that.
Whoa, not bad. 150 horsepower for a little 1.6. We don't think we've blown it up. We might have.
No, she's coming back good. Mixtures on the dyno look pretty nice.
Wow.
So,
first hit. You did some Wi-Fi and we did some road tuning. Does that mean we actually did a reasonable job?
It's very happy, and we did a safe job. So because you guys could drive it around so much, the mixtures were richer.
Yeah.
Through experience, I knew roughly what ignition timing it was going to need.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that there's still a little bit more power in it. So we should be able to feed some timing in it and bring up and up.
On petrol though, that's for a little 1.6 single overhead cam, no VTEC, nothing but a turbo on the side from eBay. Like that's pretty good.
A little bit lazy to come on,
but
that could be helping us, because if we put heaps of boost in this thing down low, that's where we get cylinder pressure and danger zone.
It is a big turbo. That's what I expected to see. But yeah, if we keep it alive, and it also putted around town, and when you get into it, let it spool up and go, right? Like that's kind of half the fun of a turbo car anyway.
Our VE map, unfortunately, is showing that this engine is not very efficient.
At all. Oh, really?
No.
Oh yeah, we're in the 60s the whole way through.
Which is an unusual shape to see, but it's as simple as this does happen, and it just shows that
it doesn't breathe that well.
It just doesn't breathe
so
that well.
So in mid-90s budget, 1.6 litre single overhead cam, no VTEC, doesn't breathe.
Weird.
That's our number for petrol people. We're going to do some like lower load stuff, and then we're going to come back for some ethanol action. tuned, everybody, on petrol. Now we move on to the fun stuff. We are going to pump out all the 98 that's left, which is not much because we purposely ran it down so we didn't have a lot of petrol in here. We'll be able to put the leftover petrol into a jerry can. Then we've got 2 jerry cans of E85, which is going to go in this thing. Then we're going to retune it again. Well, add to the tune, not retune. Ethanol, people, the Civic gonna learn. This is the first tank, it's just getting there going, what is this? The E85 has been inserted into the fuel tank. The Civic is freaking out because it has no idea what this wonderful corn juice is. And now what changes do you need to make, Scotty, to make it work?
So all I'm looking at here, ethanol compositions are at 65, 66. So I'm just making sure the sensor's working, which it is.
Yep.
The fueling is actually pretty cool. So how it works is we tell the engine management system that it's got ethanol in it. If the VE table's all done correctly, we shouldn't really have to do much work at all. Probably the nice thing to know, to remember about any of that is that the more work that you put into the petrol map, the base map for the car, we're not throwing that all out, we're just building on top of that now.
Yep.
So it's worth putting a heap of effort into the petrol tune before you get to the ethanol one.
What's it going to make, Scotty? What's it going to make?
137.
137? Oh, that's tricky.
I say that because that's also my favourite number to quote when it's a K24A3 stock engine.
That's what we want to make.
What's it going to make? 137.
All right, I'm going... Hang on, what boost are we on?
I don't know. Yeah, sorry, are we putting...
128. I'm going 128. 137, 128. You put your answer in before you adjusted the boost control. What do you think it's going to make? Tell us. Let's go, Civic. What do you got? Smells like ethanol and corn juice in here now. All right, here we go. No bent rods today, people.
All right, we'll pull out of it if it gets too much, like if it gets a bit too high, but coming on, full throttle, go.
Straight away. Still on 10 pounds.
Same mixtures, same everything. Looks really nice. Very cool. What do you say?
I said 128.
Okay.
Neither of us are close.
Same boost?
Yeah, wow.
Give me a sec.
It's just got power everywhere.
So there's no tuning changes.
Yeah.
So it's 70 to 77 kilowatts.
It's a 10% more, just straight up.
220 to 244 newton meters of torque.
Yeah, okay.
It's crazy. So let's put a few degrees of timing in it. So I'm not going to make any fueling changes because that looked really nice.
Same boost as well.
Same boost.
Run number 2 on ethanol. Here we go.
All right, that's about where it wants to be.
Yep.
Pretty similar numbers. It wants a little bit more up the top.
Do you notice a difference when you've got an ignition system like this one, a basic one, that your inputs for timing, you can't be as aggressive with it, or is it changed?
With what we're doing, no, not really. Okay. I think at the moment that it looks like the engine probably wasn't knock limited on petrol as much as we really think, and it's as simple as
can't breathe.
It just can't breathe. So we haven't picked up as much as we wanted on the ethanol. What's this other table in here that we can mess around with?
Boost control.
So what we're going to do now, not a power run, we're just going to run it up and we're just going to muck around with the boost and basically feed it in real time to get an idea of what's going on. 2.5 grand we can't make boost, we can't make full boost yet.
Right. There it goes. Oh, there it goes. There it goes.
So that's 10 pounds. And now it's 12 pounds. Can't remember. 12?
Yeah. It lifts the head at 10, so we need to go above 10. Whee! Making a weird noise. Now I can hear an external gate. Run number 3 on ethanol with some extra boost added. Let's go. Oh, there it goes, straight away.
There's the big turbo.
There's the big turbo. Look at it. That's kind of cool though. 130, wait. You said 137.
137.
But I think
we're not finished yet.
I know, I think you said 137, but then you changed your answer to like 132.
I revised it because I was thinking about the boost, but still.
177 horsepower, people, out of a little stock engine Civic with a turbo off the internet and a Haltech and some injectors and some ethanol. That's it. It's pretty cool. Absolutely stoked with that result, actually. 131 kilowatts or 176 horsepower. Considering they make 80 kilowatts at the flywheel stock, I think that's really, really good.
Yeah, so 80 at the kill, like, so if we said that we would probably measure this at maybe 50, 60 kilowatts at the wheel, something like that in this condition. So to double, more than double is pretty impressive with less than 15 pounds of boost.
Yeah, and the turbo's too big. We learned that too, right?
It is, and you can see that as it comes on. So we're making power or making boost at what, 4-ish grand.
Yeah.
We've rev limited at 6,200 where it's just started to roll over.
Starting to boogie.
Yeah, the turbo or the rear housing's probably too big, but you sort of knew that going into it.
And the engine has breathing limitations as well, is kind of what you identified?
It's a pretty sad engine. And I don't think it's this example. I think that it is what it is.
It's just that design. It's not made for doing what we're doing, but that's kind of the fun of it, isn't it?
But for what it's got in it, it is impressive. And if you want to compare that to other model engines, even later model engines, for the capacity of this thing, it's not dreadful.
Yep. $1,000 for your turbo kit, $1,000 here or there for your ECU, $1,000 for your tuning. Like, we're at $3,000. And then there's some extras, okay, a fuel pump. So we're at $4,000. I mean, it's like, it's not nothing, it's not no money, but considering how much you're getting for that money on a car that's already cheap to buy.
And for me, it's the exhaust manifold is the...
Yeah, it's the hot ticket.
That manifold for a couple $100 is pretty impressive.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, man. Should we take it,
Always
take it around
a pleasure.
the block?
Only because it's a Civic. I'm normally not that interested, just because it's a Civic with that sort of power.
You want to see what it does?
I'm keen.
Let's go.
Yeah. Handbrake down.
We're off. That's more than I expected, actually.
Make sure the brakes work.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, it feels good.
At least when it comes on it, boogies. It's making boost, it's just...
It feels good though,
Yeah.
like we're
Smooth.
not beating it, it's got grunt there now.
Yeah. You end up using so much less throttle, don't you? Because it's just sort of like, you can lazy into it.
It feels like a car you'd actually want to drive now though, compared to, like when this thing has got, what, 10 kilowatts in that area, it's pretty boring.
Yeah. Oh, of course someone pulls out in front of you when you want to get it on boost. That's silly. I'm a little bit surprised, but also really, really happy with just how well this came together. When the kit started going on and started not fitting, I'm like, maybe this was a terrible idea. But at the end of it, we've ended up with a Turbo Civic, which is a really nice little clean build that didn't cost that much money, and I think is very, very achievable for anyone who wants to sort of get into this kind of thing and modifying something quite basic.
And in a way, this is what Super Garage is all about. We got this space so that we could have a communal space that friends could come and help. And it's a space that really can be used for lots and lots of different things. So while this Civic was being built, we did Levorg, we did Hilux, we did Midget, we've done some motorbike stuff. We've also been over at Mighty Car Mods, the OG HQ, getting projects done over there. And things as simple as just the seat. We found the seat. I was actually in an up garage. I went down the back. I saw the seat at the back and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. We got it wrapped up. And then James, who's our camera guy, we had him actually on a bicycle, taking it back to the hotel, then taking it on the plane. And so we've proven with the Midget, you can get engine parts, you can get Recaros on the plane, you can bring them back home. And so, yeah, a massive thanks to all of our friends that came along. And a project like this, I know there's lots of kind of reality TV car shows that are just like, we did a makeover in a week. This has been months and months and months of work, and also a whole lot of time in post doing the editing, doing the music, doing the voiceover, all of that stuff. But yeah, really, really good job. It is a Civic. It is great. Luckily, there won't be any more Civics after this, but it is a very good Civic for what it is, right? Martin?
Yeah.
What? You have this, and you got the yellow Civic?
Yeah.
Excellent. They're great. I'll probably buy some other sex spec thing off Facebook Marketplace at some point. But for now, we're all Civic'd out, so there it is. If you do want to support...
About that.
What?
That...
Dude, don't do that face. Is this not the end of Civics?
There's another one. There's another Civic. There's another Civic.